before I cleared my name, I would have hunted them. Every one of them playing these silly games. That 1-800 ambulance chaser would have wished one came. But 911 is a joke. Public enemy #1, I've been ranked. The rock's not crumbling. The leprechauns have magically run out of pranks. Your son on a federal jail line mumbling something about having too much in his drink. You know how dumb that is? Another one fumbled his, wonder how I get the blame. Niggas.
What's up, everybody? BuzzBuster is back with another episode, so let's get right into it. The Roots picnic was in motion, and even though I had seen some things floating around, I didn't immediately realize how significant one particular moment was. There was already a lot of noise surrounding the event, but once it became clear that JayZ had taken the stage and addressed a few things, that changed the conversation. Now, if you caught the clips at the beginning, then you already know the moment people started reacting to. Once those snippets began circulating, the attention shifted quickly. Social media lit up, fans started breaking down every line, and naturally, people wanted to know exactly what was being said and who it was aimed at. That's how these moments go. One performance, one line, one appearance, and suddenly everybody is trying to decode the message. What really pushed this into another level was the lyric that immediately got people talking. JayZ delivered a line that people took as a direct message toward Drake, saying, "A rapper can't be my op."
I'm the one who strung the pain. That hill you can die on is way too much flack that comes from those planes. I'm killing them softly. What's understood don't need to be explained. You want it one way, it's the other. I still on you suckers, I maul you niggas gang. I ain't much for me, it's no how. Cancel the brunches, I remember the hunger pain. The price of the bricks going up. It's gonna cost you a beat to even say my name.
That statement alone was enough to send the internet into discussion mode. It's the kind of line that doesn't need much explanation for people to start reading between the lines, whether someone sees it as a response, a warning, a dismissal, or just a statement of confidence. The impact was instant. That's what makes moments like this so powerful at live events. Sometimes it isn't even a full speech or a long breakdown. It can be one short line dropped at the right time in the right setting, and suddenly the whole culture starts paying attention. The Roots picnic already had a major crowd and plenty of anticipation around it, but having JayZ step onto that stage and deliver something that sharp gave the event another layer entirely.
Meanwhile, that also explains why so many people were split between different major moments this weekend. You had celebrations happening, you had sports and competition drawing attention, and on top of that, you had one of the biggest names in music stepping out and sparking conversation with a few words. It was one of those weekends where if you looked away for a second, you probably missed something important. From my side, I already knew the Roots picnic was underway. Clips and reactions were popping up here and there, but at first it looked like just another strong festival moment. Once the JayZ footage started circulating though, it became clear this was bigger than just a guest appearance. The crowd reaction, the online response, and the immediate replay value of that line.
Have you niggas no shame? Y'all trying to get under skin? I really get under skin as unharmed player. Y'all thugs with y'all thumbs again. Everybody think they're the ones insane. You're no maniac. Watch y'all saniac in my presence, nigga shrink. I need a new therapist. This working. I'm truly on the brink. Y'all better not encourage me. Y'all don't want me to think these thoughts that I think.
All made it obvious that this was going to dominate discussion. What stands out here is how quickly the focus shifted. Earlier, people were locked in on the fight. Others were celebrating graduation weekend. Then almost instantly, the conversation turned toward JayZ and what people believe he was signaling. That's how fast the energy moves when a major figure decides to say something that sounds pointed. Even a brief appearance can reset the whole narrative. So overall, this weekend had a little bit of everything. You had real-life milestones with graduation celebrations, competitive action with Foster getting the victory over Ford, and then a major music moment that grabbed headlines when JayZ hit the stage at the Roots picnic. Each event had its own lane, but once that lyric started making rounds, it added another layer of intrigue to an already packed weekend.
Bottom line, there was a lot to keep up with, and this is exactly why the update came later. Too much was happening all at once. But once JayZ stepped out and dropped that line about a rapper not being his opponent, the conversation was never going to stay quiet. That single moment gave people something to analyze, debate, and replay, and it instantly became one of the standout talking points of the weekend. The numbers are climbing, and I'm already 10 steps ahead. Still, you're staring at the wrong chart, champ. Take another look. Better yet, look higher. Aim at the top if you want to understand what's really happening. As for the people you keep pointing to, I never modeled myself after them, not once. If they're the ones collecting your publishing money, then that's who you need to confront. Take that conversation to the people holding your checks. Don't bring speeches about winning to me when the paperwork tells a very different story. Read the contract carefully. The language makes it plain. It frames you as labor for as long as the deal lasts, locked into a setup that keeps working in their favor. That isn't freedom. That isn't ownership. That isn't the kind of success anybody should be bragging about. Then Kanye brought up Wonder K, almost like he was testing whether people in the room were really paying attention. The point wasn't subtle. It was about legacy, about family, and about what gets passed down. My children are part of that picture. Some of them already understand more than people expect. What's shocking is how little shame some of you seem to have while all of this plays out in public. If the goal is to provoke me, be careful with that.
That nut still stuttering. That chatty patty down on his luck again. Quest introducing me to Jaguar. I don't know why I still f with him. You wonder why I do the freestyle rehearsal. That lady back on the stuff, she sound like she in.
Pushing too hard can open doors you may not want opened. If someone wants to make it personal, I can make it personal too. There are ways to respond that cut much deeper than loud talk on a timeline.
Go ask him. He already knows exactly how I move. He understands the game I'm playing, even if the rest of you are pretending not to see it. A lot of people like to act tough, flashing an image, trying to look untouchable. Yet once they're standing in front of me, the energy shifts. The posture changes. The confidence gets quieter. Suddenly, the same person who sounded fearless starts looking a whole lot smaller. That contrast tells you everything. Online, everybody wants to present themselves as the chosen one, the wild card, the person nobody can handle. Every voice wants to be the loudest in the room. Every name wants to carry the weight of legend. In reality, most of that is performance. Most of it is theater. Calling yourself dangerous doesn't make it true. You're not some unpredictable mastermind. You're not the chaos people keep trying to sell. Watch the behavior up close and the act becomes obvious. Presence reveals what distance can hide. When the room gets real, the mask starts slipping. At another point, he turned to Nicki and made a comment about that woman being back in a familiar state, saying she sounded like she was in love. That line carried more than one meaning. It wasn't just gossip. It was a pointed remark meant to question her judgment, her emotions, and the way she was coming across. Whether fair or not, it was designed to stir reactions. The mention of her child pushed it even further, dragging family into a space where tensions were already high. Once that happens, the tone changes. It stops sounding like ordinary rap talk and starts feeling far more loaded. People may laugh it off on first listen, but those kinds of references tend to linger because they hit outside the usual boundaries.
Even with all that, one thing remains clear. A rapper is not my opposition. That role belongs to forces much bigger than somebody in a booth writing lines. The real pressure doesn't come from an artist trading words.
Talk to the government, good luck with them. I'm governed by God. You're trying to break the government. I rained for 40 days, my neck get flooded again. Wrist get flooded again. My net worth went up again.
It comes from influence, power, and people connected to systems far above the entertainment world. That's why the mention of Republicans matters in this context. It suggests alliances, networks, and backing that reach beyond music. Whether you agree with it or not, that kind of statement changes the frame. Suddenly, the dispute isn't being described as artist versus artist anymore. It becomes something broader, something tied to institutions and authority. When he says those shots came from the very top of the government, the implication is huge. He's not painting this as random fallout or everyday industry friction. He's describing it like pressure is being applied from the highest levels possible. That kind of language raises the stakes instantly, because now the argument is no longer limited to personal beef or chart competition.
If that's really the level he believes he's dealing with, then good luck with them lands less like a throwaway line and more like a warning. It suggests the target isn't just facing one angry voice. It suggests they're up against something far larger, far more connected, and potentially impossible to outmaneuver through music alone. What makes this segment especially interesting is that it doesn't stop with one target. There are other disses buried in here too, tucked between the obvious lines and the louder moments. Some are direct, others are layered. A few sound like they were meant for anyone sharp enough to catch the reference. That's what keeps people replaying it, dissecting every sentence, trying to figure out who each barb was meant for.
There's a lot packed into this stretch. Money, contracts, ego, family, power, and reputation. None of it feels accidental. Every line appears aimed to sting, expose, or provoke. That's why expectations are high for whatever comes next, because when this many angles are being covered at once, listeners naturally start waiting for the next name, the next clue, and the next response. Reactions started pouring in almost immediately. One of the first names people brought up was Jaguar. He seemed to throw a subtle shot at the member of the Roots, framing it like this was the person who first connected him to her and, in a way, opened the door to that entire world. What made it stand out even more was the way he appeared to laugh about it on stage, which only added fuel to the conversation. From there, attention shifted to another possible target. A lot of people began saying that one of the lines might have been aimed at Ashino. Whether that interpretation is correct or not is still unclear, and there is no confirmed answer. Even so, fans have been trying to piece it together because Ashino has made comments in interviews before that Jay may not have appreciated. That history is exactly why some listeners believe the reference fits. On the other hand, even if that line was not actually about him, people are still going to speculate and run with the idea anyway. That is just how these moments tend to unfold once the internet gets involved. Dame was a much more obvious case. There did not seem to be much mystery there at all.
Got up 10, wrong chart, champ. You gotta look up again. Niggas look up the hove. I never looked up to them. The crackers got your publishing gangster. Go talk tough to them. Don't talk success to me. You niggas is workers. In perpetuity's how your contract is worded. Don't make me go man. The Roots remember, even when the trees...
Whenever Dame appears online, the topic almost always circles back to Jay sooner or later. It is practically guaranteed. Someone asks a question, Jay's name comes up, and from that point on, Dame is fully locked in and ready to say whatever is on his mind. That pattern has played out so many times that when a line seems to point in his direction, nobody is really surprised. At this stage, it almost feels expected.
Drake is another name that naturally entered the discussion, and in his case, the connection feels even more direct. He recently took a shot at him in a song, so if there's lyrical pushback now, that does not come out of nowhere. There's already a recent back and forth sitting in the background, which makes that reference easier to understand. The line about the jig is up especially caught attention because listeners took it as a statement about being trapped in a contract long term, locked into a deal that does not really let up. That is how many people interpreted it. There was also discussion around the phrase people keep using, the one they avoid saying too directly. The meaning behind it, at least according to how fans are breaking it down, points back to that same idea of being tied to paperwork and obligations for what feels like forever. That is why the line hit the way it did. It wasn't just heard as a random insult. For a lot of listeners, it sounded like a very specific dig aimed at someone's business position and the lack of freedom that comes with it. What really makes all of this interesting is how each line seems to trigger a different reaction depending on who listeners think it is about. One mention sparks old industry stories. Another brings up past interviews. A different one revives long-running tension that has never fully gone away. That is why people keep replaying the words, searching for clues, and comparing them to previous public comments. Every possible name adds another layer. In situations like this, certainty is rare, but speculation moves fast. One vague line can become a headline within minutes if enough people think they recognize the target. That is exactly what happened here. Instead of one simple reading, the segment opened the door to several possible meanings, and each one carries its own baggage. Jaguar, Oshino, Dame, Drake, every name mentioned comes with a different kind of history, and that history shapes how the audience hears the bars. At the center of it all is the same question people always ask when a lyric lands with this much weight. Was it personal? Was it strategic? Or was it both? No matter where someone stands, one thing is clear. Listeners did not hear these lines as casual. They heard intention. They heard old tensions resurfacing. Most of all, they heard the kind of wording that keeps people talking long after the music stops. Those contracts have been a major topic for years, especially when one word keeps coming up again and again: perpetuity. A lot of artists have mentioned it in interviews, and every time it surfaces, the reaction is usually the same. People tense up. There's a reason for that. In music and entertainment deals, that term can carry enormous weight because it can suggest a commitment that stretches forever. Plenty of performers have spoken on how serious that language is, but one moment in particular really stood out. I remember hearing Smoke Dizzle emphasize it, and the way he framed it made the whole issue land differently. Once you really understand what that word can mean in a contract, it stops sounding like legal jargon and starts sounding like a trap artists worry about for the rest of their careers.
This isn't just about one deal or one person either. The concern has followed a lot of artists across rap, music, and the entertainment business as a whole. When people hear a term that seems to tie up rights, control, or ownership for a lifetime,
Hattie loves her Shawnees, S-H-A-W-N. I find it adorable she put the S at the end. You don't know, the show ain't even begin. I said, you don't know, the show ain't even begin.
it immediately raises questions. That's why so many artists keep circling back to it in conversations. It clearly hits a nerve. Drake's situation with UMG is part of why these discussions feel so charged right now. That kind of high-profile tension naturally gets people looking closer at how these agreements are structured and what they really mean behind the scenes. Once a major name gets connected to contract talk, the subject suddenly becomes bigger than the paperwork. It becomes part of the public conversation. Looking at the bigger picture, that's what stands out most to me when I listen to all of this unfold. There's a lot going on beneath the surface. The record in question seems packed with shots in multiple directions, and not all of them are obvious. Some are direct, others feel more like coded lines meant for people who know how to read between them. With a list that long, it's hard to say who all is being addressed. There could easily be more subliminals in there than listeners first catch. Still, when it comes to Jay, this doesn't really come off like a deep personal feud. If we're being honest, it looks much more strategic than emotional. It feels like somebody recognizing a hot moment and deciding to use it. That's not necessarily unusual in music. Timing matters, attention matters, and knowing when to step into the spotlight can be just as important as the music itself.
From that angle, it seems less like real conflict and more like smart promotion. He sees the conversation already building, sees the audience locked in, and understands how to place himself right in the middle of it. That's marketing. It's not about proving he has serious issues with everybody being mentioned. It's about seizing momentum while people are already watching closely. There's also the fact that he has a major show coming up, which makes the timing even harder to ignore. If I'm not mistaken, they're doing 3 nights in a row at Yankee Stadium or something close to that. When an artist has an event that big on the horizon, every headline, every lyric, and every bit of speculation can feed into the anticipation. Suddenly, the music isn't just the music anymore. It becomes part of a rollout. That's why this feels calculated in the best business sense. He knows the audience is paying attention. He knows controversy, mystery, and layered lyrics can drive conversation. Most importantly, he knows how to turn that conversation into visibility right before a major run of performances. Whether people agree with the approach or not, it's hard to deny the strategy behind it. So when you put all of it together, the contract talk, the loaded word perpetuity, the broader artist concerns, the Drake and UMG context, the possible subliminals, and the timing around those upcoming shows, the picture starts to look clear. This may not be about an all-out dispute at all. It may be about reading the room, catching the wave at exactly the right time, and using the moment to maximum advantage. That's what makes it interesting. On the surface, it sounds like tension. Underneath, it may just be sharp positioning.
And in this business, those two things can look almost identical until you slow down and really examine what's happening.
There's a strong chance Jay has a project on the way, and if that's true, this moment may have been far more strategic than spontaneous. Instead of treating it like a random outburst, it makes more sense to see it as a calculated move, something designed to plant an idea in people's minds fast. A quick acapella on stage can do exactly that. It sparks conversation, creates clips, and instantly becomes part of a larger rollout. Look at the way he delivered it. He was smiling through the performance, almost like he understood exactly what he was doing in real time. That kind of energy usually tells you this is not just emotion taking over. It feels intentional. It feels like a setup for whatever comes next, whether that's a song, a project, or a broader promotional push. Even with all that, he still stepped up and rapped. At the end of the day, that matters. This is hip-hop. This is part of the competitive side of the culture. Artists get on stage, say what they need to say, and put it in the music. If someone wants to answer back in an interview, they can do that too. Nobody is stopping them. Still, if we're being honest, the strongest response usually comes through bars, not through side commentary. There's also another layer to this, because once people start mentioning responses, other names get pulled into the mix. Tony Busby came up, and that just adds more fuel to the conversation. Suddenly, it's not only about one performance anymore. Now viewers are trying to connect every line, every reference, and every possible target. That is how these moments grow from a quick stage appearance into a full-blown online debate.
Then there's the Tory Lanez angle, which makes everything even more complicated. One line seems to point back to that phone call where he allegedly said someone was not telling the truth. That is why people are now trying to decode whether the lyric was a direct reference or something more vague. The wording leaves room for interpretation, and once that happens, everybody starts playing detective. Some listeners think the line may connect to the part where Tory Lanez reportedly said he was intoxicated on the call. If that's the part being referenced, then the lyric could be aimed at that explanation. At the same time, there's still uncertainty around the details, especially when people start labeling what kind of call it was. That's where the conversation gets messy, because not everyone seems sure on the exact facts. Right now, a lot of this is still speculation. People are reacting in real time, pulling apart lines before the full context is even clear. That happens every time a charged verse hits the internet. One person hears a direct shot, another hears layered wordplay, someone else thinks it is all just performance and promotion working together. Until more breakdowns come out and the lyrics get studied line by line, the debate is only going to get louder. What makes the whole situation so wild is how quickly one short rap moment can turn into something much bigger. A few bars on stage become headlines. A smile becomes evidence of strategy. A possible lyric reference becomes a trending topic. Before long, the audience is not just listening to the performance anymore. They are examining intent, timing, and subtext all at once.
That is why this feels bigger than a simple off-the-cuff moment. It may have looked loose and casual on the surface, but underneath it, there may have been a plan. If a release is coming, this was an effective way to get people talking without formally announcing anything. He did not need a press statement, he did not need a trailer. He just needed a mic, a crowd, and a few pointed lines. For now, all anyone can really do is wait and watch. More lyric breakdowns are going to surface, more clips are going to spread, more theories are going to show up. As the details get clearer, people will probably have a better idea of who was being addressed and what exactly was meant. Until then, the conversation is going to keep moving, because moments like this are built for replay, analysis, and reaction. However it turns out, one thing is obvious. The performance did exactly what a powerful rap moment is supposed to do. It grabbed attention, stirred debate, and pulled everybody deeper into the story. That alone makes it a major moment, and the fact that so many questions are still hanging in the air only makes it even crazier. Jay recently made a point about battle rap, saying things can quickly shift into something much bigger. That is exactly why some people are going to look at this situation and call out the contradiction. They will say, hold on, you just spoke on artists taking shots at each other in records, and now you are stepping into that same space yourself. Still, this feels far less like a personal issue and much more like strategy. Jay understands how attention works. He knows a moment like this gets people talking instantly. Conversations start online, videos pop up everywhere, fans debate every line, and suddenly the spotlight gets even brighter. In that sense, this move looks like smart promotion more than anything else.
Naturally, talk like this is only going to fuel speculation about what comes next. A lot of listeners are probably going to hear this and assume a JayZ album cannot be too far away. That is how these moments work. One bold statement turns into headlines, and those headlines turn into anticipation. Before long, everybody is watching for the next drop. What interests me most, though, is not the drama around it. I want to hear the music. I want to hear the actual bars. A quote or a snippet can spark attention, sure, but the real test is what it sounds like once it is fully put on a track. That is where it becomes real. Delivery matters, beat selection matters, flow matters. The energy of the record can change everything. More than anything, I am curious about how JayZ would approach it in full form. What kind of production would he choose if he is really aiming pointed lyrics at someone? Would he go with something stripped down and cold, letting every word hit clearly? Or would he pick a smoother beat and let the confidence in his voice carry the message? Those choices make a huge difference, especially when the goal is to make a statement without saying too much. Hearing it properly recorded would tell us a lot. The cadence, the pauses, the control, the way the lines land from one bar to the next, all of that shapes how people receive it. On paper, certain lyrics may seem sharp. Over the right instrumental, they can become unforgettable. That is why I am waiting for the full version before making any final judgment. Another interesting possibility is that this could open the door for even more responses. Maybe Jay circles back and takes aim again, only this time going even broader. Maybe he addresses everybody in one record and lets the entire rap world react. If that happens, the conversation gets even bigger, and every artist mentioned would feel pressure to answer.
That is the part that makes hip-hop exciting, when it stays focused on the music. Competition has always been part of the culture. The key is keeping it on wax, keeping it creative, and letting skill decide the outcome. That is when things get interesting for fans. People are not just listening for noise, they are listening for who really has something to say and who can say it best. As for Drake, this kind of moment always raises the obvious question. Does he jump back in the booth and respond? Even though he just released an album, that does not mean he can't come back with something extra. In rap, timing is everything, and sometimes the biggest records arrive when an artist feels challenged. One strong reply can shift the whole conversation overnight. If that happens, fans win. More records, more bars, more debate, more energy. That is the version of this I want to see. Not endless talking, not side drama, just artists stepping up and answering through the music. Let the record speak. Let the flows compete. Let the audience decide what hits the hardest. Right now, this feels like one of those moments that could build into something much bigger if the artist involved choose to take it there. Jay clearly knows how to create attention. The public is already reacting. Expectations are rising. Now the only thing left is the part that matters most, the songs themselves. So yes, I am watching closely. I want to hear the beat. I want to hear the full verses. I want to hear how JayZ structures the message, how sharp the writing is, and whether the record lives up to all the discussion around it. If he follows through, people will have plenty to break down. And if others answer back, even better.
At the end of the day, let it stay rap. Let it stay hip-hop. If there is something to say, put it in a verse and send it out. That is the cleanest way to handle it. Now, I want to know what you think, because this could be the start of a major run of responses, and everybody is going to have an opinion once the music starts landing. There's much more on the way, and the next videos will dive even deeper into the chaos surrounding this whole situation. The buildup has been impossible to ignore, and the drama keeps growing with every new turn. Keep your focus locked on the screen, because what comes next could be the most revealing part yet.